budget 2023 has had the highest allocation, 372.3 billion ringgit for the upcoming year, and the biggest allocations to be under education and health ministries. And of course, we will discuss further on the budget 2023, how we feel about it, how in professional opinion, as well as how the delivery will be among the Malaysian nation. So we have with us to discuss the highlights of budget 2023.
Exactly, as similar to what we had last week. This week along, we also have a tax partner, but this time from PwC Malaysia. We have ANUSHIA SOOSAIPILLAI to actually speak with us about this hottest topic that's going around. How are you, ANUSHIA? You're doing fine?
Hello. Very well, thank you. Happy to be here.
All right, thank you for being with us. As mentioned, there's nothing else to talk about but budget that was presented last Friday. And as what Erin has actually mentioned, this is the largest allocation of budget that has been presented so far in Malaysian history. A few things that we do want to highlight on the show is that the first thing is about the tax income rate that has been decreased by 2 percentage points from 13 to 11%. This is between the bracket of 50,000 ringgit to 70,000. And for the 70,000 ringgit to 100,000, it has also gone down 2 percentage points from 29% to 19%. And the consolidation of the income between 250 to 400k, as well as the 400k to 600k, in which that is being set at 25% rate of tax. Now, what does this mean for B40 and M40? Because again, for the layman people, they look at this as just numbers and they may not understand this much, but what does this actually mean for the public, for the rakyat?
Okay, so when we talk about a 2% reduction rate, the term reduction, right? Every individual taxpayer, when you ask them, what's on your wish list for any budget?
Sure.
Inevitably, a reduction in personal tax rate will definitely be on their wish or their request. So here the government has listened to the rakyat, to the people, and it's right timing, bringing in a reduction of 2%, like you mentioned, Mio, in the mid categories between 50,000 ringgit to 70,000 ringgit and right up to 100,000 ringgit income categories. This 2% reduction in income tax translates to 1,000 ringgit in the pockets of individual taxpayers in that income category. And for the income earners that are exceeding beyond 600,000, it translates to 250 ringgit tax savings. Now, what does it mean in the bigger scheme of things, right? So when you look at it in totality, this translates to 800 million ringgit of tax savings, which directly goes into the pockets, predominantly into the M40 group, because that's the targeted group. So you've got 800 million of ringgit that's allowed to be spent, that's in the pockets to be spent into the economy. And there is a cascading effect. When the M40 spend, it cascades down to the various parts of the community.
Sure.
The B40 benefit as well, because the M40 would spend in the mom and pop shops, the smaller vendors, the stalls, the gig economy providers and suppliers. And so the 800 million reach is across the economy, across the many sectors. And as we're coming out of this pandemic, as you see, there's more social activity.
Sure.
The youngsters want to go out, the middle income group want to go out and spend, have a good time with their family. So it's timely, and I think it's really good to see that it has been focused in the right category, that mid-tier, to allow the community to benefit the most. So yes, so I think the M40 and B40 definitely will benefit from this 2% reduction.
2% reduction, and of course, like how ANUSHIA has shared as well, do take that opportunity to spend time with your family. But a certain limit would be better, I feel, because sometimes people have the urge to overspend. I'm talking about myself as well. So a certain limit, maybe if you can work out your financials, like how I shared earlier in the show as well, that would be much helpful. And going in further about budget 2023, home purchases has also been helped by the government, currently being introduced, in which the houses costing 300,000 or less, they will get like a stamp duty exemption, producing savings of about 6,500. 25% stamp duty exemption will be given to those purchasing of houses worth 750,000, which is about like savings of 15,000. So will this actually, in your opinion, will it ignite more purchasing of homes, specifically for those who are planning to buy their first homes?
Okay. A good question, Erin. This particular incentive, so maybe let me shed some light as to who it benefits the most and who it is targeted at. So this particular incentive is targeted at first-time homeowners, first-time home buyers. And if we look at the stamp duty exemption, existingly as early as July 2020, there was an introduction of stamp duty exemption for these first-time homeowners, and it was for the value of properties that are 500,000 ringgit and below. It's 100% stamp duty exempted.
That was due to the pandemic.
Correct. And then for the properties that are valued between 500,000 and 1 million, there was a 50% stamp duty exemption. This particular incentive that was announced by the minister 2 days ago literally increases that exemption from 50% to 75%. So it is an enhancement. And will it ignite first-time owners to go out? I think we also need to be cognizant about the context in which this was also announced. The minister also mentioned that the National Affordable Housing Council is going to oversee the construction of 500,000 affordable homes nationwide by 2025. So is there a link between the two? Do the houses that the first-time homeowners buy, does it need to be particularly designated houses or governed by this housing council, or can it be open market houses? Could it be from the secondary market, or does it need to be first-time units by developers? So we need some clarity on that aspect. So will it create a spurt? I think it will create an interest for first-time homeowners to want to go out there and see what they can purchase, but they need to understand a little bit more details around what properties qualify for this category as well.
Exactly, as what was presented over last Friday, is that all of this is, again, is a proposal and it still need to be passed. As long as we get to the nitty-gritty of what the actual content detail, as what you mentioned, Anusha, really understanding what is it consists of in regards of the tax exemption and who does it apply to, I think it's very, very important for all Malaysians to really know about this moving forward. Speaking about moving forward as well, we also saw a huge commitment coming out from the government-linked companies. We're talking about a promise of more or less a 50 billion ringgit investment, committing to that in the year 2023. We're talking about the likes of Hazana, we're talking about the likes of Petronas, with other GLCs out there who are committing to give up essentially 50B, that's B, capital B, billion, to the nation. That definitely helps a lot the nation, doesn't it? And Keluarga Malaysia as well.
Exactly. I think one key takeaway, Mio, from that, it shows that the government cannot do it on their own, right? They need the support from the broader community. And it's really commendable to see the GLCs willing to invest, to put in that promise, as you say, 50 billion of commitment to the rakyat, to the nation, towards nation building. And as we move forward, there needs to be collaboration between the GLCs and the government. And if we look at the areas of focus, that 50 billion, where is it going towards? A big chunk of it, 45 billion, towards domestic direct investment. The last few years there's a strong focus on foreign direct investment. That's very important. We still need to pursue that and focus on that, but it should not overshadow domestic direct investment. So this 45 billion towards domestic direct investment is important, and it's welcomed, because if you look at the profile of the GLCs that we have in Malaysia, they have a very wide footprint. They cover a wide sector of industries and trades and businesses. So they're quite well placed to support SMEs that work adjacent to their businesses, the SMEs that contribute to their value chain and that ecosystem. So in having this focus on domestic direct investment, you're trying to elevate all levels of society, not just the larger companies to prosper, but looking at bringing up the SMEs in the value chain.
Sure.
And who best to do it? Somebody that's in your ecosystem. Bring them in, grow with them. The other two areas of commitment by GLCs, we looked at the food security project. I mean, that's really important, right? As a country, as a nation, we need to focus to be more supportive of ingrown talents and ingrown businesses in country, right? There needs to be less dependency on imported supplies all the time. So if you look at the food supply chain within Malaysia, from farm to dairy to livestock, is there constant supply for consumers like you and me? Is there disruption? Many months ago, we saw issues around chicken and livestock, and there was supply chain disruption, right?
Correct, yep.
How do we prevent that from happening again? How do we use this food project areas that are going to be supervised to help ensure that we have that constant supply and the country is able to benefit from local consumption and from local producers as well? I think another area of significant investment in the scheme of things was on venture capital investments for startup companies, right? Startup companies and entrepreneurs. I think it was the tune of 1.1 billion was committed by the GLCs out of that 50 million bucket. Malaysians as a whole over the years have evolved, right? The startups are coming up, they're more adventurous. If you look at the youth, the younger generation, they like their own startup companies where it's not the conventional, traditional business model that we look at. It's more about inventing, looking at technology, embracing digitalization, looking at intellectual property. And where do they get stuck? Where do they need the most support?
Funding.
Funding, right at the start, at that infancy stage, during that gestation period. So with the GLCs committing to help support these kind of startup companies and the entrepreneurs, it will help them, have a proper footing and, a good chance of success.
I mean, like, just to go on further a bit, when you talk about entrepreneurship, again, you have the existence of MEDAC, you have, all of these other companies as well who promotes alternative financing as well. You got all the P2P types of funding. You got also the crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding as well. These are all different types of funding that a lot of people are actually looking at, and looking at how Budget 2023 was actually proposed. This gives a much better platform, at least to the young entrepreneurs to succeed in what they're doing. Don't you agree with that?
Totally agree. I think you're right, Mio. There are many avenues that the young entrepreneurs can access if they are aware. So I think awareness needs to be hand in hand with all these incentives and measures that are put out there to allow those that need to access these benefits, they know the path. How do I go about getting that support? How do I qualify for that support? So these are important details that needs to be shared fairly soon so that we can move at a pace that the economy needs us to move as well.
And of course, truly the promise that how you mentioned, it will truly help the distribution of, in many areas, the food chain can also help in SMEs. There's a lot of areas to be focused in terms of the allocation, the promise from GLCs. But looking at another thing, which is 55.6 billion, talking about the big B just now, the largest allocation in federal budget of 2023 in comparison to 2022, which was 52.6 billion ringgit. Clearly, education has taken its #1 priority in Malaysia, and in developing and welfare, basically a full 360 degrees. So share with us your thoughts and what is the country hoping to achieve in this?
Okay, I think first of all, I would like to say about time. Education gets this huge budget, right? So 55.6 billion, commendable, excellent allocation. As the saying goes, right, education knowledge is the prerequisite to performance. So we need to build our community, build our youngsters and students, give them the right footing. if I look at this allocation towards education, how it has been streamlined across the various areas, I think it's done in a very holistic approach, in the sense that they've looked at the well-being and the welfare of the students. They've looked at the infrastructure in terms of the building and the structures used to facilitate the teaching. And also the funding aspect of it that comes at the end, where it comes to tertiary or vocational schools. So it's holistically done. So if I start with well-being first. So the well-being and the welfare of our students. Prior to this, student assistance was only provided to households where the household income was less than 3,000 ringgit. Now, with this budget 2023, it's across the board. Every household that has students going to primary school are entitled to 150 ringgit per child. So if you imagine a household with 3 kids, so that's 150 ringgit times 3. So 450 ringgit to help the parents defray some of the costs around going to school. Then you look at the kid going to school. We've got the food supplement support, where the government has committed to increase the daily allowance for the food supplement to ensure that the students are well nutritioned when they're in school, right? So it was 2 ringgit 50 cent allocated per student, but now it has been increased to 3 ringgit 50 cent per student. Kudos to that. With the rise in cost of living, I think you need to align these costs to ensure the kids are well nourished, right? And there is significant allocation, around 700 odd million towards this nutritional program. And it not only helps the students, but also the canteen operators as well, to make it realistic in terms of the cost. If I move to infrastructure, so that's well-being, looking into the well-being and welfare. If I look at the infrastructure, a significant amount of the budget in education has been put towards updating, upgrading, repair and maintenance of school buildings, school structures. It is important, for children to have a conducive environment for them to study in.
For sure.
Yes.
That's when they best absorb and they learn, right? Because that's the environment that they're going to be day in, day out, 5 days a week, right? So it's not just in Peninsular Malaysia, but a number of schools in Sabah and Sarawak have been identified as well, especially the wooden structured schools are going to be upgraded as well, and also going to be well equipped with digital equipment to help our youngsters with what's ahead of them. So that's in terms of infrastructure. And with all this funding support, the student loans that are available, the funding support for the vocational programs, the TVET programs, I was looking at a statistic which said 55% of our SPM leavers go towards vocational school or a TVET program. So the funding, I think it's well allocated to support the youth that are going to go into the workforce, that are going to be a right fit. I think one area that I feel within this education budget which would have benefited and perhaps a little more attention could have been paid was towards upskilling and reskilling the teachers and the educators, which was a little bit neglected, I feel, in the education budget, because these are the teachers and the educators who are going to impart knowledge on the students.
Correct.
So I think it would have been good to have a little budget allocated for that upskilling, perhaps next year.
Perhaps next year, but at least we hope that, again, we can't deny the fact that without teachers, there's no schools.
Speaking of value of education,
Yeah, exactly. Because it's a symbiosis kind of relationship. At the end of the day, one party needs another for you to become, proper, for you to actually deliver this education. We do hope that the nation do realize this and do the best that they can in regards of our educators.
And like you highlighted, the infrastructure especially in schools in Sabah and Sarawak, the travel journey for students to the school as well, that is something to be thought of indeed. Because we've seen a lot, especially on social media, online, we've read about it. Students having a hard time getting to their institutions, their schools. That is, of course, something else to be discussed about. But yeah, I think that is something to be pressed on as well, on top of all the points that you have shared with us today.
I do believe that we have a last question for you, this one specifically, but I'm going to pass it to Erin because she's actually one of the ones who are championing this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just putting it out.
I feel that one thing really fascinating that has been highlighted in Budget 2023 were the initiatives taken for women. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's the first time we have actually focused something in that area in budget allocations in Malaysia. And could you please share with us what initiatives have actually been highlighted for women in Budget 2023? And how do you, women to women, how do you actually feel about them?
I think it's a positive change, and it's sign of the times, sorry. And I'm very happy to see that it was introduced, and we even saw our Prime Minister talk about the gender focal team, where he would like to see a lot of ministries even being championed by women as well. So coming back to the budget and the allocation towards supporting women and getting them back into the workforce. So there has been an incentive provided to, I would say, encourage women who have taken a career break to come back to the workforce, and they've been given a 5-year tax exemption. So that's an excellent initiative. There's also been allocation of funding to support women who are starting up new businesses, to upbuild their businesses and entrepreneurship, and also training by Securities Commission to get women well equipped to be able to handle board positions and take on more leadership roles. So yeah, so it's a great movement on that front.
Thank you for sharing.
All of the women out there. Thank you so much. Again, when we talk about budget on the show, 20 minutes is never enough.
Yes, but we're running out of time, unfortunately, for our segment.
We do have to stop here. But again, thank you so much to ANUSHIA SOOSAIPILLAI from PwC Malaysia for coming down to the show. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And hope you have a great day ahead. Thank you.
And your trip as well, and the end of this month.